Okay, so I hope my screen is visible. So for the last by the executives and we had an introduction of new residents for executives. So to make the name is so please, if there are any questions, minutes and make your contribution. Can someone please move to the previous minutes? And then you can move there. Okay. If you cannot unmute, you can just write it down there. Who is moving the acceptance of the meetings? Any seconder? Just type it. And for the acceptance of minutes. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for second. So moving on to today's business, today is going to be very exciting. As I said, we are going to have very experienced resource personnel, crust of the matter, that is neonatal jaundice awareness, and moving from awareness to action. So at this point, I would like to not waste any more time. I'd like to introduce our very special guest, our guest of honor, who would share today's webinar for us. And she is a very renowned personnel. She is a member of the head of Maternal and Child Health Department, College of Health Sciences in the University of Ghana. She holds a doctoral degree in nursing from University of Alberta in Canada, and with study on focus on global health and quality newborn care in the rural and low resource settings. Dr. Mary Aniampons, more than 25 years work experience in maternal and newborn health, with clinical expertise in lactation management and implementation science. She's passionate about supporting family newborn care in the rural newborn health and in clinical practice, has worked in several professional and academic committees, and she has taught as a guest lecturer across continents She has published several peer-reviewed journals and grants and projects. Dr. Mary Aniam Ponsa has also worked in a consultancy and technical reviewer position, WHO, USAID, MCGL, and COINN, and National Health agencies. Her work extends to students, residents. She supports young faculty. She mentors them. She's an award-winning recipient of the Talent Woman of African Descent. That was in February, Black History Month, Alliance Jeunesse Famille Alberta Society of Canada. That was in 2022. She's also a Queen Elizabeth Scholar and an international scholar, and she holds a lifetime honorary award from the Golden Key International for excellence. So without much ado, please let's all welcome our chairperson, Dr. Mary Ani Ampo.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Chair.
Can you hear me?
So much for honoring. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for honoring the invitation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shanda. Very grateful. Good. I'm so honored to be part of today's session. I look forward to a very fruitful engagement, not only with our clinicians, but also with families represented here. Newborn jaundice and care around it is so passionate to all of us, and that is why we are here. So I wish all of us a very fruitful deliberation, and I look forward to other partnerships. Thank you so much, Doc. I'm grateful.
Medroot Sam. So from now, Dr. Medroot Sam will take over the moderation of the webinar. Thank you very much. Dr.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tina Shandoff. And thank you very much, Dr. Mary Ani Amponsa, for honoring our invitation this afternoon.
Thank you.
As you all know, it's been the Yellow May. We've made a lot of noise about neonatal jaundice throughout the month. We've been on the streets. Some have taken part in walks. Some have been on radio and television in different dialects and so on. Now, today we want to look at a new direction. We want to take a step back and see how, as the theme has rightly put it, awareness to action, how the awareness is actually translating to action. So today, our very first speaker is no stranger amongst us, a very well-seasoned pediatrician with decades of experience, especially in neonatal care. Today, I want to describe him as an agenda setter. Why so? He plays a significant role in framing and determining priorities for discussion, and he also advocates for change. I am very delighted to call upon our first speaker for today's discussion, Dr. Kojo Aho-Issel. Dr. Issel, please, your audience.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. And let me share my slide. Dr. Shandoff, if you could unshare your screen. Thank you. So I think I hope my screen is visible to the audience.
Yes, we can see your screen.
I can be heard.
Yes,
okay,
loud
so
and clear.
so when First of all, let me say thank you for the organizers for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. When Ruth contacted me to be part of this, I was glad because it's something that's, as we all know, is very dear to all of us, our hearts, and especially some of us who have worked directly with some of these kids. I think the impression I got was to talk about some of the challenges, recommendations, and maybe the way forward, especially looking at where we've come from as an organization, as a group, or as a nation, and also from the perspective of if you have the means to do the right thing, what will you do? So that's what I'll be doing. So there will be the outline of my presentation. I'll try to be as fast as possible. There will be the some of the abbreviations I'll be using during my presentation. As I always do, I like doing. I want to start this with a case scenario or case vignette, and maybe I would like somebody to read, and I would like people to share their answers, quick ones, so that we deliberate on this. Thank you. It's free. This one is no mark, so please, let's go. Okay, so it seems nobody is ready to read. So I'll read this. It's a 35 weeks gestation, birth weight 2.2, otherwise healthy infants, age 24 hours, was being discussed on ward round in a postnatal ward. The serum total bilirubin was 262 micromole per liter. The consultant asked the residents what this value actually meant, and the following possibilities were suggested. So one possibility was one resident plotted the results on the hour-specific bilirubin nomogram. Because the value was greater than 95th percentile, this resident concluded that increased hemolysis was present. The second resident related to the late prematurity of the infants. The bilirubin conjugating system is immature. He claimed, resulting in the increased total serum bilirubin. The third resident claimed that the pathogenesis of the high serum total bilirubin value was multifactorial, and that both increased bilirubin production and hemolysis contributed to its development. Which answer do you think is correct and why? Maybe some people suggest some answers. Please, let's make it lively.
Yes, so you can even type your answers if
Type your
you're shy to
answers so
speak.
that Ruth will read them. If you don't want to answer, type your answers. Okay, so for me, my answer will be the C. Why the C? The C because most of the time that is what it is. However, we all know that mostly when we think of neonatal jaundice, people think of one particular cause. The point I want us to understand today is that whenever you have a child, a newborn with neonatal jaundice, don't think of one pathophysiology. There could be multifactorial. So you need to look out for all these factors and to be able to address this patient and address them well. Because if you fix on only one etiology, you might miss the other ones that you need to act. So a baby who is hemolyzing, maybe that same baby might not be feeding well, which might contribute to that. A baby who is hemolyzing might not be passing adequate stool, and that might also be contributing to that. So there are lots of most of the time. It's not only one pathophysiology. So let's always look at that from the beginning of the synthesis to the elimination side. There could be a lot of factors. So the second case scenario that I want us to also talk about, that the parents of a 35-week gestation male birth weight was 2.5. Were told on the day two that their baby was jaundiced and needed to undergo phototherapy. The mother suddenly became moody and said she was not lactating, and so the baby was not getting enough breast milk, which is why he was jaundiced. She requested to feed her baby with formula. At that point, she was visibly teary. The father later told the doctor that his wife's behavior was because they had lost their first child at age 6. He had neonatal jaundice at birth and then went for phototherapy, but he never walked or talked. That even he, the father, was shaking when he heard the word phototherapy. What do you think were the gaps in approaching the parents of this baby? Can somebody share any idea on this? Can somebody share ideas on this? Okay. So, one of
Professor, I want to share.
yes, please. Yes, please.
So I was thinking that so when the clinicians saw the parents, a detailed history would have helped, and that would have brought out some this information earlier, probably from the past history, and then the approach would have been more cautious in giving out this information to the parents, knowing that a previous child had this had neonatal jaundice, severe neonatal jaundice, or suspected bilirubin encephalopathy, and did not survive from this. So the approach would have been different in talking to these parents about it. Thank you.
Great, Nelly. Thank you very much. Anybody with a different approach, a different answer? So obviously, very good. So the main point here is that the communication was not the best. Okay, so from taking the history and also relaying the information to the parents, there were a lot of gaps that they need to be filled. And sometimes that's what's happened to us, the clinicians. We don't really give enough information. The parents become very, very sad, and later we then have to go back and try to save the situation. Okay, so currently, I work at a bank hospital. The reason I'm bringing this one is that I want to compare what a well set up facility will provide for a newborn and why and how in our traditional settings will also happen. So, for example, as I said, the NICU at the bank hospital is a well-resourced place. It's a level 3 and take care of every baby from 0 to 28 days. We have 4 incubators, 2 cots, 2 radiant warmers, ventilator tray, and most importantly, phototherapy units 5. I might even say that the maternity also have a 2 or 3 firefly that can also be we can also fall on. So these are some of the things that it's over there. The admission numbers are not very, very high, about 78, for example, last year, mostly delivered by cesarean section. Outborns about 28%, inborns about 72%, more female than male. Normally doesn't happen in where I've worked. Most of the time is the male being more than the female. There are a lot of late preterm to extreme preterm. So about 50% of the babies are actually preterms babies. So you know that these babies will become jaundiced at a point in time. As we know, the preterm babies are more at risk of becoming jaundiced. And most importantly, about 80.8%, or 80% of the babies are diagnosed with jaundice and will have to receive care. This means that you need to get adequate equipment to be able to take care of these babies. Okay, so this is very, very important. So what is done? What do we do at the bank hospital when it comes to this? And so we have a postnatal ward, where or postnatal rounds where babies are examined within the first 24 hours by the pediatric team, mostly led by the pediatrician. Babies are subsequently examined till the babies are discharged. Jaundice is actively checked for and in natural light or sun during the rounds. Among other things, mothers are encouraged to breastfeed their babies. And so when babies are jaundiced, what do we do? Parents are counseled, samples are taken, phototherapy is initiated, and lab results are within few hours. So you can take decisions as to who is to continue phototherapy and who is to stop phototherapy. That's very, very important. Lab results are discussed with parents. All don't listen to allay fear, because one of the things over here that the population or the clientele here are quite educated, and so you need to make sure that they also come along with you. Understand? Some of them will actually come and tell you that my baby is jaundice, or my baby developed jaundice previously, so I'm suspecting that this one to be jaundice. Yeah, on you, okay, and also giving you information. They want to understand what you want to give them. Phototherapies are stopped mostly if the serum bilirubin is less than 50% of the phototherapy level. So that's what we use most of the time. Follow-up visits are scheduled mostly within few hours, about 48, if there are risk factors. And those who don't have a risk factor, and they are okay within a week. So what is that we sort of follow the WHO guideline in terms of examining newborns. So examine at birth, within 3 days, examine, by the 7th examine, and then at 6 weeks to babies are examined. So these are some of the things that we will see. So a chance upon this data that stated that 30% of the admissions in the Kulobu emergency department, where I've worked for several years, were due to neonatal jaundice, and 7.8 of them actually came with bilirubin encephalopathic presentation, and then 8% of them died. Most importantly, the mean age at presentation was 5 days. What is this? That so if you have a baby who has risk factors, HB, ABO incompatibility, RH incompatibility, GCSPD, most importantly, neonatal sepsis, which is leading the baby to develop jaundice. If they come late, they might come with all this bilirubin encephalopathic distance. So it's very, very important, even though it's not a published data and it's quite old. I thought that was important to bring it up. In Kulebu Niku, a retrospective study that was done, we also noticed that about 61.8% of the babies were jaundice. So that's also very, very important. So it means that in all our facilities, we have babies that they become jaundice. What is the other thing, the awareness that we've been creating, the awareness that we've been talking about, all the noise, as Ruth put it, that we've been doing? This study is also done in Kulebu and Mamprobi, and this one was published in 2019, but the study itself was done in 2013. And by then, 77% of the mothers had heard of jaundice, but only 27 of them had heard from health workers. I'm suspecting that from now, if we are supposed to do a similar survey, we might get a higher number saying that they are hearing it from the health workers, what is very, very important for all the pictures that we are seeing. 92% of them did not know the cause of the jaundice. That's one of the main thing. And there was actually no association between level of education and the information, the knowledge. And that's very, very important. So it means that it cut across every person, whether you are uneducated or not. People might have issues with jaundice, and so it is so important that we continue drumming in, we continue educating, talking about neonatal jaundice. Okay. However, if mothers have a multiparity, mothers' age are advanced, they tend to know more than the ordinary person. This other studies too was done and published in 2022, and in that study, it was done in 3 facilities: Mamprobi, Rich Hospital, and then I think one in the Eastern region. It was also noticed that 85% of the mothers that were surveyed knew about neonatal jaundice. Okay, and most importantly, about 92% of them knew that they had to seek medical help, medical care. And that's very, very, very important for us. So as we're drumming in this thing, the mothers are supposed to know. But one important thing is that they didn't know about the causes of the jaundice. Okay, but again, in this particular one, maternal age, maternal education were associated with the knowledge of neonatal jaundice, which is very, very so. Even in the same country, we have different things happening. So, what are some of the challenges that we face as a community? And as I will talk about when you are in a right place, what are the things that you get? So we all know that infrastructure and resource gaps are one of the things. So limitation to phototherapy units, equipment is one of the problems that we have, and it's very, very important. Sometimes you have a lot of babies, for example, where I've worked, Kulebuniku, for example, you have about 50 babies, as was pointed out, 61% of them will be jaundice, and that means that a lot of phototherapy units will be needed to take care for these babies, and most of the time you don't have the numbers. Some of the machines are broken down. You will see nurses moving from one cubicle to the other, moving equipment and making sure that the babies who are severely ill get phototherapy. Sometimes unreliable electricity might also be one of the issue. One important thing is to how to test. We all know that it's a very big issue for testing. At least just doing a transcutaneous bilirubin will give you a lot of information to be able to manage your case. But in this case, most of our facilities, we don't have this equipment. But even in the bank hospital currently, the NICU doesn't have the equipment. Okay, absence of reliable and timely serum bilirubin results. So our labs, that's one of the issues that we all know. So from one area to the other, it's quite clear. Sometimes you take a serum bilirubin, you need a report to work on. Then the report might come the next day, which is not very good. Or sometimes you won't be able to run it at all. Some facilities, you have to actually send the lab to another facility to be able to run for you. And all these things actually delay care and might cause the life of the baby. So all these things are challenges that we have. So for example, these phototherapy units I got from a colleague who once showed me that this is what they use in their facility. So as you can see, this is what is being used. This is the bulbs, okay? You can see about three spaces, spaces for light, but you only can see 2 of them being functional. So what it means is that this baby is not getting might not be getting adequate phototherapy. So if the baby has a severe hyperbilirubinemia, that baby might be in problem. And this, I was told that they were the only ones available. So if there are more than 2 or 3 babies having this problem, then it's going to be difficult to treat. Okay, unlike other facilities where phototherapy units are available. So for example, this unit's very, very powerful. Is an LED unit which can easily treat the patient. That's what we need in all our facilities. That's what we should be advocating for. Human resource, sometimes we don't have enough nurses or enough clinicians to be able to do the work that we are supposed to be doing. Lack of dedicated neonatal ward staff. And in some areas, they have to be shifting nurses from here and there. In fact, sometimes the nursing staff, they tend to do rotation. So people who have been stationed at one place and they've learned the trade and they're able to detect and do all the work are moved to, let's say, internal medicine. And that's actually cause a lot of trouble that we're not supposed to be doing. Good. The other thing is training and neonatal knowledge gap. So unavailability of guidelines is some of the things that we see. So in most of our facilities, we don't have our local guidelines that guide us. And actually, we show the guideline from the Ghana Standard Treatment Guideline. I will show what is there as neonatal jaundice. And you notice that there are a lot of gaps that we need to fill in terms of gaps. And that is what most facilities will be using. So it's a big issue. Poor understanding of the guidelines. So most guidelines are based on serum bilirubin levels, and it's been noticed that for some cadres of workers who aren't that above the information, they find it difficult to apply these guidelines. And sometimes there are disagreement between clinical what do you call it, the disagreement on clinical indicators, what maybe one doctor will say or one nurse will say, and it becomes a problem. We all know that visual assessment is not the best to go. Mostly the gold standard is to have your serum bilirubin checked, and most facilities, as been mentioned, they don't have the facility to be able to check, so they'll be using visual assessment, which is not the best way to go, and that creates a lot of trouble. In terms of training, for example, this paper that was published or was done in Tamale also talk about nurses, and you notice that the knowledge of neonatal jaundice about by the nurses weren't that up there, and so that even affect their attitude to working with this patient. So all these things are problems that we face as a community, as people who work with newborns. Okay, and then communication and with caregivers or concerns of caregivers, how we should address them. So per the case vignette, it was clear that these we didn't really retrieve more information. And again, when we're delivering information to the parents, we also did not go it the right way. And so it creates panic, it creates issues. So sometimes that's what it been noticed, that it is difficult for clinicians, for nurses to be able to explain to the knowledge of the patient and to the level of the parents. And that is what we should be learning to do. Okay. So caregivers, obviously, as was also pointed out, comes with their fears because of maybe a previous encounter, previous experience, or what they might have heard in the community. Maybe a friend's or family's child developed jaundice, and now he's developed cerebral palsy, and it's become a burden and all that. And so they come with fears, and immediately they hear jaundice is a big thing. And so we need to know how to go about when we want to deliver information to our respective clients. Lack of engagement with family decision makers. And sometimes it's important in most of our public facilities, and most of our parents, especially those who are from the lower socioeconomic background, even with people who are from high school background, depending on their traditions, their customs and all that, they always want some things to be discussed with other decision makers, i.e. the father, the grandmother, and all that. And if these people are not brought in, and it becomes a problem to handle. Sometimes they are already prepared. They prepare the ground for outdooring for the baby. They want to take the baby home, and then you come and say that baby is jaundice and you need to start photo, and it becomes an issue. Okay, so all these things are things that we have to address. For example, in where sometimes that's one of the problems that will come. People are very happy after delivery, want to take the baby home, and then when you bring in the jaundice, and they become an issue. Yes, even though some of them understand that you have to do so, you need to bring everybody on board. Sometimes you even tell you that you want to keep them to make money, and it becomes an issue. So you need to be able to communicate well with this patient. What are the other things? Difficult to diagnose jaundice. It look very simple and all that, but it's actually been noticed that it's difficult for people to diagnose jaundice, especially if they want to use the visual assessment. So all the visual assessment tools that have been there has been proven to be not to be very accurate. So we need to be using serum bilirubin or using the other technologies that are available, which is very, very important for us to know. So as we talk, as we advocate, we don't have to just talk and listen. We need to get the things, go to our leaders to get the things that we need to work with. Early hospital discharge. Sometimes the maternity ward is full, and the beds are full. They have new cases coming. For example, where I previously worked, that's one of the main issues that will come. The postnatal, people will go around, they will see a patient. The next moment, when they go, the patient has been discharged, and then they would have missed that case, and that's an issue that we need to see how we can address this. And so it's also important to examine every baby when they are born and subsequently. Poor post-delivery follow-up. So it's also a problem that is there. As I was referring to, WHO has a guideline for all of us to follow in terms of a newborn examination, when to examine them at birth, within 2 to 3 days, 7 days, and all that. And it has to be a standard for all our facilities. We need to put in place, whether small or big facilities, we need to make sure that we put these things in place so that we don't miss babies with problems, especially we don't miss babies with jaundice. Because for me, I always tell people, I'm afraid of jaundice. I am afraid of jaundice because it can easily disgrace you. I am afraid of jaundice, not because I cannot diagnose that, because if you miss a baby with jaundice, especially with risk factors, you might not be happy for that. So what are some of the recommendations that I want us to talk about? Capacity building for all careers of health workers. So we need, as we deliberate, we talk about in all this, we need to make sure that everybody is getting some education. Even in the medical schools, in the nursing schools, we need to do that. Recently, I had the privilege to partake in some script marking for some cases of health workers, and there was a question on jaundice, and were asking about treatment, people were still mentioning sunlight, and I was alarmed. So it means that whoever is teaching these people hadn't really gone down to tell them that, okay, sunlight is not really the way to go. And they were giving it as answer. And it's alarming. That's a health institution training a student. It's important for us to know what to treat. We need to update our curricula. We need to make sure that whatever we are teaching the students are evidence-based and current thing that we need to treat them. Improve in communication between health worker and caregivers. Very, very important, as I've mentioned. We need to be doing that. Implementation of things that will give us easy or will make it easy for us to teach the parents or explain it to patients. So using pictorial guide and scripts to explain phototherapy makes it easy. Pictorial things are easier for people to learn from it. And then getting the point of care, bilirubin testing equipment. So TCB, the Billy check, some facilities have them, some other facilities don't have them. Now there are a lot of things that are coming out. The Billycam, the Billydesk, and then Pictoris. These are some of the things. Some of them, they use only mobile app, okay? So you can even use that with your phone. But the issue is implementation, and it takes a lot from government, from stakeholders to be able to implement this. So its penetration is not as people would have expected. For example, the Billy check, the transcription billing are very, very expensive, 5,000 and that. So most facilities cannot actually procure that. And the formation of peer groups. So we need to make sure that after we treat patients, we form a peer group where we bring them on board when we have patients who have jaundice and they are very concerned. These mothers or these parents will be able to counsel them, to talk to them, to be able to understand that yes, this is not that serious thing that can be managed. It's very, very important. Okay, so this some of the things. Increase availability of phototherapy lamps and eye covering pads. So very, very important. So it seems very simple, but most of the time this is what we have. I have, and on several occasions, we had to move around. Okay, this baby is looking better. Let's move the phototherapy. Let's send to this other patient, and then we are running around looking for phototherapy because the units are not adequate. They are not there. And that is an issue. So we need to talk about that. We need to look for these things. Okay, reliable access to electricity. Okay, so we will need other things that will help us in terms of providing electricity. So maybe plants in our facilities, if we advocate for all those things, will be important. Task shifting. So task shifting is letting somebody who is not up to a particular level do a work of let's say as a medical officer, teaching, a nurse, or community health nurse to be able to detect jaundice, something that can be done, and it's been done in several areas that have given good result in terms of care of newborn and for other cases. So we can do task shifting, teach people how to diagnose, how to pick them, and how to refer if they need be. So a way forward, which are some of the things that I'm proposing in my talk as way forward. So empowering parents and healthcare providers in early detection. And so important. So all the talk that we're doing, the most important thing is that we need to detect these babies with jaundice very early. That is very, very important. Early detection. Early detection is by doing physical examination, is by doing investigation and all that, by empowering mothers to be able to bring their children if they think that the baby is looking jaundice. They have to bring the baby. But as I've said, visual assessment alone is not enough. You need laboratory investigation to be able to really know what is happening to the baby. You need some tests to be able to do that. And that is also important for us to be talking about. Implement educational program with simple, easy to understand learning materials for everybody. That's too clear. Improve communication among parents and the medical team. We need to be able to do that. Communication. Sometimes immediately I always tell people that if you have a parent who comes in, especially a father who comes in and says that discharge my baby, I want to go home. There's only one thing. The underlying problem most of the time that in my experience is that there's funds issue, lack of money. There's issues. Anytime you sit the parents down and talk to them well and they understand, they actually come on board. And especially when you offer to help, they change their mood and they actually come along because nobody wants his or her child to die. Everybody wants the best for their child. So that is what sometimes is the problem. So we need to communicate well. Advocate with local data. Medical audits. We need to be doing that. We don't have to be talking alone. We need to talk with the data we have in our facilities. So as we go to our management team to talk about them to provide phototherapy units, eye shield, and then reagent for laboratory investigation, and procure machine to be able to equipment to be able to run the bilirubin and all that, the chemistry. We need to go with data and tell them that this is the number of babies that we are having. This is a number of babies that are coming with severe hyperbilirubinemia. This is the number of babies that are dying from jaundice. They are supposed to know. We are supposed to give them the information, and that is it. Somebody told me once that it's data. If you don't use data, you cannot communicate to authorities. You can't get change done. You can't get anything done. So data, we need to be doing that. Even if you put 1, 2, 3 together and say 2%, 4%, it's data that you are communicating. You can use that one to make decisions. You cannot to actually build on to actually do even bigger studies. Okay, involve the facility management team. That's very, very important in all aspects. You need to know. You need to talk to them. Talk to them, don't talk to them, as I said, talk to them with data. Let them come on board so that they can help you to purchase the thing that we need to purchase. And they need to understand that even though pediatrics we don't generate, we are tending to a group of people that are the future of the nation, and we need these babies alive and thriving. So that's very, very important. And then we need to make sure that the politicians are aware of this, the government are aware of this. What are the things that we need to do? We need to go to them, and going to them to the same thing as I said. You don't go to them this thing. You need to go to them with the information that it will catch their eye, will make them think that, okay, we need to also come in. And most of the time is political will. That's what is causing all our trouble. A lack of phototherapy, lack of reagent, lack of machines, lack of human resources. It's all because of that. And we need to bring them on board. Okay, and surely timely diagnosis and treatment, as I've talked about, is very, very important, and addressing barriers to care. So if we can advocate for free treatment, as from management, from diagnosing to treatment, doing investigation free, treating the children for free. Yes, we know that health insurance come in, but health insurance, we know that there are limitations, there are things that you need to pay for. And so these are the things that we need to advocate for that. We need to go to the higher authority to tell them that a baby with jaundice needs to be treated for free, and that should be done. Okay. Development of local guidelines. So that's the same thing. We need to develop our guidelines to be able to guide us in whatever we are doing. And we need to, after developing that, the issue about guideline development and guideline usage is that when the document is there, people don't read. That's another point. That's another point about guidelines. We also notice that people with guidelines, sometimes they don't even read. They appear. But one of the things that guideline helps you to do is that it makes everybody be on the same plane. Again, it's also there for you that if there's any issue, you can actually fall on. Even when it's a legal issue, you can even fall on and say, this is what our facility is doing in terms of that. And it's based on evidence and all that. So that is very, very important. You can adapt from other facilities, but you need to make sure that you adapt to your local needs and settings. Establish follow-up program for all newborn discharged from the health facilities. I think it is long overdue for all of us to be doing that. Whatever facility you have, the newborn are supposed to be followed up. Okay, the newborn are supposed to be followed up when they are born from maternity. Yes, we know that our colleagues ups and down, immediately the baby comes out, it's not their baby, it becomes our baby. But we need to make sure that we follow up these babies, give them the time that we need to examine them. Those at risk, at least within the 48 hours, we need to see that. When they go home, we need to come back to us to examine them and all that. And strengthening curriculum in our training facilities, institutions is very, very important. And the collaboration and integration, we need to bring everybody on board. The community health nurses, they can help us because there are babies that sometimes I think of those babies that are born in difficult to reach areas. somewhere in the middle of or the Volta region. If the baby has jaundice, what happened to that particular baby over there? Are they all surviving? Who has the data on such babies? It's something that it comes to mind you're thinking about. So community health nurses are there to also come on board and help us. If you train them well, it's been noticed that they do a very good job. You can do home visit, and in fact, some other, even in sepsis, some people go and inject babies in these communities. Okay, so it's very, very important that we bring every level of health cadre on board, and they all will help us. The people, the traditional birth attendants, the healers, and all that, they're also important because most of them they go with the myth and the misconceptions. So if we bring on board and then make sure that we dispel this myth and then misconception, it's also going to go a long way to help us manage our babies. So this is what I was talking about, the guideline, Ghana Standard Treatment Guideline. The latest was 2017, and this is all what is in for us as neonatal jaundice and management. Okay, so they give you the courses and all that. They give you some of the investigation that you're supposed to do. They talk of non-pharmacological treatment and pharmacological treatment. They give you some few things, but I think it could be a bit more elaborated for us. But at least there's something there. So if your facility doesn't have one, you can follow on this. But as I said, it needs to be vamped up and updated. So that is it. So this one, for example, you can use it as a follow-up in the facility. Babies are born and discharged. What do you do? Before 24 hours, you need to be examined. If they go home before 24 hours, within 72 hours, they are supposed to come to you and you see them. All those at risk have to become earlier. Between 24 and 48 hours, within 96 hours, they are supposed to be seen again. Okay, within 48 and 72 hours, what they are supposed to do within 120 hours, so within 48 hours of discharge, that is the word. Within 48 hours of discharge, you are supposed to see these babies again, especially those with risk factors. And it can be done from the hospital perspective, the community perspective. It's possible using the health other health officers that we have. So in conclusion, I would say that to be able to eliminate the effects of severe neonatal hyperbilirubinemia, it will take the concerted effort of all of us. The family is very, very important. Is the nucleus, the units of our society. And if the parents understand what it is, what they're supposed to do, the dangers associated with jaundice and all this, they understand that if I have a baby, you have to bring the baby out and be inspecting the skin and make sure that baby is not jaundice. So if jaundice, take it to hospital. It's very, very important. The community, okay, bring it up at community, everybody, community heads, there's opinion leaders, everybody there. If you understand, bringing on board government, very, very important. And then ourselves, the health professionals. So it's from the nurse, from the doctor, from the laboratory, for the biomedical engineer who is supposed to fix the machines for us and all that. Everybody is needed. And then all these things should be supported by a robust research that can let us know what is happening in terms of that, whether we are going forward, we are coming backwards, whatever we are doing is going to help us. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wow. Indeed, the agenda has been set for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Isel, for an insightful presentation. I've made so many points that if I want to touch on it again, it will actually be another presentation. But I think the main one that I would want to reiterate is the fact that we need to collect our data so that when we are advocating for equipment, staff, and all that, we have the evidence to actually show. And also, I want to entreat members that we need to consider repeating this health survey to find out, even as we've been doing this Njam for the past almost 8 years, how effective has it been, so that we will be able to strike a comparison. So thank you so much, Dr. Isel. Thank you. We'll take our questions in the Q&A session when the presentations are done. So please, you can type your questions in the chat box in the meantime, or you can hold on when we have the Q&A. At this juncture, we want to call upon our second presenter. She's in the person of Miss Rita Tete. She has a vast experience in midwifery. She started work. Oh, okay. Sorry. Can I still be heard, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So she's in the person of Miss Rita Tete. She's a staff at Oduman Polyclinic. She's going to throw more light on the shared experiences in neonatal jaundice management from her perspective, her being in a lower resource setting. Just give me a moment to please share her slides on her behalf. Okay. Sister Rita, if you are on, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Please, as the introduction has been done already, I'm Rita Tete, a midwife from Oduman Polyclinic. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Isel very much for his presentation. I think he has hammered or touched most of my points. So I'll start right away. Thank you. So my presentation is basically based on our experiences, challenges, and our recommendations. So with the experiences, we have little observations that we have done that mothers who identify signs of jaundice, such as yellow discoloration of the eyes and skin, usually report to the OPD because in our facility is a small facility and is highly populated area with low bed capacity. So normally after 6 hours, if mothers are fine, through SVD, we discharge them. So most of them present through the OPD basis. The midwives also midwife detect babies with suspected jaundice during physical examination prior to discharge. There is usually the presentation of most suspected jaundice cases to the facility due to some mothers treating babies under sunlight at home till their condition worsens before they bring them. Some mothers treat with glucose solution. Some also are unable to detect the yellow discoloration of the skin and the eye. So these are the observations that we've done in our periphery. So, routine actions performed. Cases are seen by midwives and doctors and immediately referred because we don't do phototherapy at our facility. Mothers are encouraged to breastfeed on demand to enhance recovery of babies. With our challenges, our main challenge is one, we have delay in seeking help for the baby. Some of the mothers and relatives will not bring the babies on time. They will tell them to use the sunlight, the glucose, and some of them also keep the babies in the room. Normally the room is always dark, so before they will bring the baby out, the baby is already having the signs, the clear signs of the jaundice. Also, there is also delay in transporting babies to referral centers due to decision by family or financial constraints. This point is basically about they have to inform their relative, their husband. Sometimes you have to the referral facility also receiving the case have to delay. Sometimes you call, they will tell you wait for 5 to 10 minutes, and they will not call. When you call back, they will tell you they don't have space, or so all this causes a delay. And some midwives also miss early detection of cases due to incomplete physical examination. As I said earlier on, we have a lot of deliveries and we have insufficient births at our end. So observing the mothers for sometimes even 12 hours is difficult. So we are in a haste to discharge them to attend to other cases. So sometimes we miss that early detection through the physical examination. Please, can we go to the next slide? So as I continue, we don't have phototherapy equipment at our facility. So most of our cases are being referred. Then delay from high-level facilities in receiving has also been talked about already. Then some of the facilities also demand high deposits before receiving the babies, which is also another problem for us because we are in the low-income community, and sometimes they will tell you they don't have money, so they prefer to take the baby home. But mostly when they come through the OPD, we let them go as walk-in since they will attend to them. We have no bed space, hence cases are not received at the receiving, which is the referral center. And sometimes approach to share information about cases to patients' relatives by higher facilities usually leads to lack of confidence in accessing periphery facilities. Sometimes when the parents and the relatives come, the way we break the news to them or the way we inform them, sometimes they made them aware or known that it's the referring side periphery that has caused or that has delayed the baby not reaching the referring facility early. And sometimes this happens because, as I said earlier on, you call and they will tell you to hold on, to wait, and they will never get back to you. Please, for the recommendation, we are saying higher facilities should provide guidance through telemedicine to referring facilities on initial management of babies with signs of jaundice to minimize complication. We will be very grateful if this thing is initiated. Sometimes when we are referring, we put it on the page or we call, they will ask you to present the case. After presenting the case, they will tell you there is no bed. So we wish that maybe the initial treatment, maybe for 6 hours or less than that, so that we can start the treatment at our facility before maybe later on we refer the baby. But sometimes the information, nobody will respond to us and the baby will be there. Sometimes you just have to go to the referral site by force without any call, and we go there and there is a whole lot of us. So when we send them, provided we get to the referring center, they will attend to us. Then sharing information about cases to patients related by higher facilities should build confidence in assessing periphery facilities. So that will go with follow-up and feedback. But it looks like those follow-up and feedback, most of them, we miss that side. We don't call to find out how the baby was treated or the outcome of the baby. And they also don't call back to us to tell us this and this and that. So next time we should go by this and this and that. That will save the baby's life. We are saying doctors, midwives, and public health nurses should improve collaboration. That is to intensify home visits, since most of them also don't deliver in the hospital. They deliver at TBA's home. So when the public health nurses go into the community, they'll be able to also identify those mothers and bring them early, since most of them keep them in the room where the room is dark. So maybe a week after, before they bring the baby to the light, then they realize that the baby is already jaundice. So we are saying that they shouldn't keep babies, at least they should bring them outside at least twice a day to observe the baby as well. We say midwives should ensure thorough physical examination. Despite the busy schedule, we should make sure we examine the babies physically from head to toe before discharging them. Then we should intensify our health education on signs of neonatal jaundice before discharging. Sometimes we have to involve the relatives, the husband, because some of the mothers, when they are about to be discharged, they are eager to go home. They don't even listen to whatever you are telling them. They will go and they will come back and you ask them and they will tell you, they didn't tell me this, they didn't. So when we involve the relatives in caring for the baby in the health talk, I think that one too also will be of help. So with this point, I'll recommend UGMC because right now they are working hand in hand with Oduman Polyclinic, helping us to set up a phototherapy unit so that we can also take care of our jaundice babies before referring to the higher facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sister Rita Tete, for this insightful. I appreciate how you made the example so practical, and I'm sure most of us on the call can actually relate to the scenarios you have stated, finding yourself in I should say, a lower resource setting. I think the most important takeaway for me is that we need to establish good feedback mechanisms in order to have good collaboration between referring facilities and those at the receiving end. I think Sister Rita has touched on it. We should be able to call, give good information, and this even fosters good relations for future case management. Thank you very much for your recommendations as well. All right. At this point, we are going to invite a parent who is going to share her experience having had 2 children who have had neonatal jaundice. So I invite Madam Shanice Ajinim Boateng. She's a business development manager who has agreed to come and share her experience with us. Madam Shanice, the floor is yours. Thank you. Madam Shanice, you can unmute and speak, please. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so
Good
much for this honor to share my experience with all of you. It's an honor. Thank you so much. So for me, I have two children who have had jaundice, all of them, and it was shortly after birth. It was a nurse who pointed out the first time. Hope, thank you so much. Hope you can all see me. So it was a nurse who pointed out the first time when she noticed that my first son actually was yellowing, actually, his body, his eyes, everywhere. And for me, being a first time mom, it was very scary because then, as Doc said earlier on, even with all the noise, some of us don't have much awareness, even from the hospitals. So what happened was, I did my research, I read a lot just to find out what was happening. And it was, I mean, the first thing I learned was not to panic, actually, not to panic, to ask questions, and then to trust my instincts as well. Yes, so for those who, I mean, I'm sure everybody here knows, but jaundice basically is when baby's skin and then the whites of their eyes appear yellow. So in my case, both of my babies had to undergo phototherapy. And if you hear the word phototherapy, your first thought is, oh my God, what is that? Which then there's this scary machine they have to go under, which is also scary. Because for me, seeing them in their diapers with just the protective eye mask, I'm pretty sure I wept a few or two times, and other mothers here would actually agree with me that it's quite scary. But then I knew that it was for the best, and I had to let them lie inside. I mean, I also found out that through the medical doctors, the nurses, the midwives who did such a great job, coaching me, educating me, they were very, very, very helpful actually. Because if you're a first timer, this all looks quite scary, especially with the yellowing eyes and then the yellowing body as well. But the first thing I learned was one, to not panic, and then two was to ask questions, and then three was to also trust my instincts. Because I remember with the second born as well, what happened was we were discharged the same day because by God's grace, everything went fine. So by the third day was when I realized something was going off because I realized his eyes were turning yellow. Initially, I asked, I think my sister, who was like, "Oh no, they think it's white." It's just in my head. But then what I did was I trusted my instincts. So I think that same evening we came to the hospital. When we came, his bilirubin levels were so high that they had to automatically admit us, even though we were not ready and everything. We hadn't packed anything, but we also knew from experience that the earlier detected, the better. Which I mean, we all want a positive outcome. Also very scary, also very, very a lot of tears and all that. But we also know that it's for the best. So right after we stayed in the hospital for a couple of days, then we came for subsequent checkups. Another thing that shocked us honestly was that I found out that jaundice rebounds because we went home, everything was fine. We were set. Then we came for review just a couple of days and we realized his levels had actually spiked instead of coming down, which was something I had no idea. And this was even my second time. So I mean, this is just sort of another awareness as well that we feed as much as we can and then go out as much, not keep baby in the room all the time because what happens is you don't help the situation, you just sort of worsen it. This, I mean, and this is just for maybe new moms out there like me. The first time, I'm pretty sure you're thinking you failed yourself, you failed your baby. But that's the thing, we are doing our best. And then we are literally learning as we go, and then we are reading and then we're improving, which is most important. So, any new moms out there, we know that you don't blame yourself, you know that you are doing the best you can, and it's actually for the best as well. Another thing just to recommend was the doctors at UGMC, the nurses, the midwives were extremely helpful, which I like to say they took their time, they took their they took their time, they were patient, because when this jaundice occurs, we know that the first 5 to 7 days is very, very critical, but they are patient. They answer all your questions, because I had a million questions between my husband and I, who was equally very helpful. He, should I say, the calm to my panicking. But all in all, everything was well. And for the challenges, if we experience any challenges, it will be to say maybe we were not educated ourselves. So what happened was we have to read more, because the first thing here was John saying, like, what is that? We've heard of it in the past. They told you that when you give birth, you go and sit outside in the sun. And to date, I'm sure maybe I'll ask Doc to answer that question for me. I need to know if it's scientifically backed that actually it works, and the sun it's a mighty factor. Because for some advice we've heard is that nothing, it doesn't really do much. Some people who advise that it really works. So I mean, I'm sure Doc Doc will answer that question for us. But all in all, I mean, it's been a very interesting experience, because both of my sons as well were, in fact, have an RG6PD food defect, which doctor later explained to me that it's also quite a factor that causes this jaundice. So let me just already an underlining factor. So all in all, every single day we do our research, we stay on guard, we learn, we read, we are cautious, because we also don't want let that to be a relapse or any situation like that. Thank you once again for an opportunity to share my story. I hope it brings comfort. I hope it brings clarity, and I hope it gives courage to other mothers out there, which was very important to have, like-minded mothers who needed support, who needed guidance, who needed assistance. It was very reassuring to see other mothers there, to have conversations with them, to discuss. Just seeing other mothers there, at least, you know that you're not in this alone. So to have the opportunity by Dr. Sam, it was very appreciated, actually. Thank you, Dr. Sam. Thank you to the audience. I'm available if you have anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Shanice. Indeed, thank you too for your words of encouragement to new mothers. Now, I believe you are a strong advocate for neonatal jaundice, and your question will also be answered. And thank you for agreeing to participate. It's very much appreciated. Now we'll move on to, please hold with your questions. You can type it in the chat box, or you hold on for the Q&A, where all questions will be attended to. Next on our lineup is the presentation by our biochemical engineer. She's in the person of Engineer Beatrice Abnayeboa. She has nearly a decade experience in biochemical engineering, and she's responsible for overseeing biochemical operations of the Women and Children's Building, which house in UGMC, which houses the NICU as well as PICU. Her work involves equipment inspection, procurement, staff training, and offering technical support to ensure that there's excellent neonatal and pediatric care. So I'm happy to welcome Engineer Beatrice Abnayeboa to take over. Thank you. You can go ahead and share your slides, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. So today we'll talk a little bit on the behind the screens, what we biomedical engineers do in terms of helping the medical staff in neonatal jaundice management. We would highlight some of the roles that we play. We understand the reason why it's very important for us to do proper equipment management and some of the key quality assurance and quality control practices that are being done in my facility, which is the University of Ghana Medical Center. And then we'll share some of the best practices that we can take so that we have best results. So as a clinical engineer, as a biomedical engineer in the hospital, my main role is usually to develop and also implement quality assurance and then quality control protocols. I also have to train and also support staff in medical equipment usage. I do service logs, inventory taking, just and also advocate for proper equipment procurement, which means that I do specification to make sure that we buy credible and modern equipment for the facility. Now, it's very important that we do have proper management of the medical equipment when you look at the neonatal area. The reason is very simple, is because we know that neonates are very vulnerable. And so a little bit of inaccuracy can go a long way to affect their treatment. And early detection, like previously said by some of the clinicians, is very crucial in terms of jaundice management. And if you have a properly maintained and calibrated equipment, you have a more improved outcome, and also you reduce your mortality rate. Now, the devices you focus will be looking at will be the jaundice meters and then the phototherapy machines, which are some of the two key medical equipment that are used in jaundice management. Now, on my slide are a few of the ones that are commonly used in Ghana. So let's now focus on jaundice monitors or jaundice meters. Now, in Ghana, you will usually find the very simple jaundice meter, this one, which is not usually mounted on any station, and in very high or high resourced departments, you'd find the ones which are mounted on a stand. Now, for my part, as a clinical engineer, my daily work I have to do in quality control is to do a visual inspection to make sure that the light that emits from the end of the jaundice meter, the light that when you put on the forehead or the chest, the light that emits is working. And I also do the self test and then the zero check. Now, as we go on in the slide, I'll explain what the zero check means and the self check, some of the things that we do during the protocols that we've developed. Now, weekly, we do compare the logs with samples from the lab. So we have to make sure that what you are seeing on the jaundice meter and what the lab is seeing tallies, because sometimes, as we go, I'll explain further, but sometimes you might have disparities in the values that you are getting. That could show a sign that the jaundice meters might not be working properly. And also quarterly and annually, we do go for calibration checks. We do firmware updates and then staff retraining, just to, if we have new staff and old staff, to just to try and make sure that they're up to date on how to properly use this equipment. Now, let's start on the zero check. Now, if you have a standardized jaundice meter, you would find that you would have something we call the 0 marker and then the 20s marker. Now, the 0 marker usually is for showing that when you put it on a 0, it's actually a 0 and there's no value. Sometimes, if it's even a bit out of calibration, you should not get more than 1.5 for your 0 check. Now, you would have a maximum value for some between 18.5 to 21.5. Now, once your check doesn't fall within these values, it means that your meter is out of calibration. And yearly, you would have to, depending on who the manufacturer of your machine is, you would have to go take it for servicing. And usually, if you are having machines from Germany like Draeger and the rest, you have to take it to the Draeger service offices in Germany. There is a local rep that will take it to Germany to do a calibration. And then in the middle picture, you see one from UGMC that has the calibration sticker and when the calibration expires. Now, if you do not do this and you've never done this, then it means that you could actually be having a faulty jaundice meter, a jaundice meter that is giving you values, but whether those values are actually the real representation of the cerebrum or the bilirubin levels in your patient, you might not know. So this is an extremely important check. Now, the 0 and the 20s check is done usually on weekly basis. You have to make sure that during the week, anytime within the week, you'll find that you should have done this to make sure that your things are working properly. Now, yearly, you also have to take your machine for calibration so that you know that you are actually standardized according to the regulations set by WHO. Now, in terms of maintenance of a jaundice meter, daily, we would prefer that we wipe the tip where you put on the patient's body. You have to wipe it with at least 70% of alcohol. And also, you also can use a lint-free cloth, but it should be devoid of moisture. So you cannot use a wipe like any type of wipe that you cannot use it. You have to either use a gauze, and maybe if you don't even have 70% alcohol, you can use spirits to clean the surface that emits the light. You have to clean that surface properly to make sure that the irradiance or the light that emits from that side is coming out properly, because if there is any dirt or moisture on that surface, you'll not really get the light emitting properly, and it will also give you an inaccurate reading. Regularly, like I've stated before, we also have to take it for yearly calibration. And then we look out for cracks or wear on the sensors, because it also affects the accuracy of the data that you will get. And it should always be stored in a very dry and cool place away from moisture, because it's an electrical device and moisture is not good for it. It can destroy the parts that are in there. Now, let's consider the phototherapy machines. Now in Ghana, majorly, we would find the fireflies, which are using the LED lights, or this type that uses the fluorescent bulbs. These ones are usually referred to as the CFLs, or the conventional fluorescent lamp. Now with the conventional fluorescent lamp, and the one that Dr. I think Aho Excel showed in his picture earlier, there are some few challenges that come with it. First of all, the irradiance or the emission of the light, the wavelength of the light from those ones are very low. Hence, when you put babies on those type of phototherapy, they tend to keep long before their bilirubin levels drop, which we usually refer to as the rate of fall. So the rate of fall, or the rate at which the bilirubin should be decreasing in the blood, keeps long because of how low the wavelength is. With the firefly, because of the LED light and also the basin, you know that the basin is a glass, a shiny surface, so the photo is able to reflect in all directions. Hence, it's easier to get the baby's cure faster, because both the top and bottom of the baby would or all parts of the body would receive enough light emission to help in faster recovery. Now, the middle picture is what is in vogue now. This one is a fiber optic. So you put the baby inside, it's like a blanket. So you put the baby inside, and also it's similar to the firefly, because then you have a 360 irradiance of your patient. Now, just like the jaundice meter, we do have daily, weekly, and annual checks. So the daily checks usually would involve us looking at the bulbs, making sure there are no breakages and the rest. And then weekly, we do use light meters to check. I will go to another slide that shows how we do that. And then quarterly and then annually, we do change the bulbs and then recalibrate the phototherapy machines. Now, in terms of maintenance, usually we do clean the housing because it gathers dust quite often. So you have to take the glass out, clean the bulbs, and make sure that there are no dust particles that is covering the surface of the fluorescent or LED lamps. And then periodically, of course, we do change the bulbs to make sure that it's giving a good radiance. Now, in a proper setup, you would find what we call the light meter. So this is us in UGMC performing an irradiance test. So we put a light meter, turn it on, and then measure the irradiance coming from the phototherapy machine. Now, for a properly functioning phototherapy machine, you should be having on the light meter, you should be having values between 440 to 465 microwatts per nanometer. And for the ones that use the bulb, fluorescent tube bulbs, like the Draeger ones, where I have circled the black box, you will see some numbers written there. Now, for those bulbs, you can use for only 1,000 hours. So whatever number you see, so after you've changed the new bulb, you note the number on there. And then whenever you do your quarterly check, you would now come and look at it, whether that number is more than 1,000 of what you did previously. Now, when it is about 1,000, you have to now be ready to change the bulbs. Now, the good thing about the fireflies is that the fireflies can go for 44,000 hours, which means that when you invest in a firefly in your institution, you are going to use it for a very long time before you change any of the LED bulbs. But for the Draeger ones, you'll be changing the bulbs quite often, and it's not cheap. It comes at a fee. Some of it, sometimes one bulb is about 1,300 Ghana cedis. And each of the phototherapy machine, the Draeger ones, you can use 6 of the bulbs. So you can imagine, you multiply by the number of phototherapy machines you have in your units. And so it's quite not cost efficient at all. And so if you ask me and if I'm advising any units to get any type of phototherapy machine, I'll say that go for phototherapies that do have LED lights because it has more hours of radiance. Now, in terms of troubleshooting, what are some of the things that we do to check whether these jaundice monitors are working properly? Sometimes we see the calibration drifts. So the calibration drift is after you've done your calibration and you check the values that they are getting for the patient as against what the lab is giving. You will see whether there is a huge gap. If it is a huge gap, it means that the calibration has drifted or is no more well calibrated, which means you have to take it back to the manufacturer for recalibration, which is very expensive. It's a big problem because if your facility do not have the money to support this, it means you will have a jaundice meter, all right. However, it will be non-functional. Now, the phototherapy machine, the low irradiance. Now, you cannot use your eye to look at the bulbs and say that this bulb is dim. That is not how we check whether there is a low irradiance. You have to actually use a light meter. So if you do not have the light meter in your facility, that's another problem on its own. Expire bulbs, sometimes it's even difficult to actually acquire or procure these bulbs. So those are all some of the problems we have. And also sometimes documentation, because if you don't have proper documentation, you cannot do the comparison or the comparative test that I spoke about. So sometimes documentation could actually affect how we do our corrective maintenance across the year. Now, in short, we say that for you to effectively manage jaundice, you will have to definitely have the clinical expertise. But we as biomedical engineers, we would always have to ensure that the meters, the phototherapy machines are all safe, they are reliable, and it's also efficient for life saving. And together with this partnership, we'll be able to light the path to healthier newborns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abna Yeboah, for a very insightful presentation. So in effect, it means we may even have our phototherapy machines, but if they are not cared for properly, we are not even doing effective phototherapy. I can also predict one question that will be coming up in our Q&A, that how much do these machines actually cost and how do we get them? So I think you should start preparing your answer for that. At this point, we are going to introduce our last speaker for today. I know most of the time when we are on the ward and our lab samples are rejected and when our results are taking so long to come in, we get very frustrated and all that. So we've invited a medical laboratory specialist in the person of Mr. Mr. Ebenezer Donald Otu. He works here in University of Ghana Medical Center as a senior medical laboratory scientist. He has over 5 years of experience, and today he's going to talk about the management of neonatal hyperbilirubinemia from the laboratory perspective. I think at this point, we need to keep our ears very wide open so that we get all the answers that we've been looking for. So the floor is yours, your audience, Mr. Otu.
Thank you, Dr. Son. So at this point, I'll share my and begin the presentation. Okay, so good afternoon once again, and I'm grateful for the opportunity given to actually talk about neonatal hyperbilirubinemia from the laboratory perspective, and we'll be going through the various challenges that we encounter as a laboratory department and some of the common sources of errors that we encounter as well, and the recommendations that we can also be able to implement to help in the management of neonatal hyperbilirubinemia. So as we all know that neonatal hyperbilirubinemia is a common condition in newborn. From the laboratory perspective, about 40 to 50% of the laboratory requests we get from the neonatal ward is usually to assess neonatal hyperbilirubinemia. And this projects to help you understand that neonatal hyperbilirubinemia is a very common condition and among the neonates. And our role is just to provide various laboratory testing results to aid in diagnosis and also assist in monitoring the management as well. It's very, very important for us to understand that the results we generate is not just any results, but the accuracy and the reliability is very, very crucial. And they are important in getting timely interventions to alleviate the deterring complications. Now, at UGMC, we usually get a lot of serum bilirubin cases in the year. And over the years, we've realized that the number of cases that we analyze is increasing. And looking at 2022, we had about 616 annually. In 2023, the value increased way up to 1,072. 2024, there was a part of the year where we had system breakdown where we had to outsource our cases, but even in view of that, we were still able to access about 854. And when you take a look at 2025, you realize that for the first 4 months, we are almost gaining around 300 cases, and this will project about getting about 1,200 cases by the end of the year. So this implies the cases keep increasing, and neonatal jaundice is one of the common conditions in our vicinities. Now, when it comes to the laboratory, we have the point of care testing where we use the transcutaneous bilirubinometry, which can be used by most trained nurses and doctors in addition to the laboratory professionals. It's a very non-invasive procedure where you use the bilirubinometer to share light on the skin of the neonate and absorb the reflected light. And this is being used to estimate the amount of serum bilirubin. The non-invasive nature makes it convenient, and the results generated is also fast. So it's very important that most neonatal wards have this kind of machine available. And even in the deprived areas where they might not be able to do phototherapy and exchange blood transfusion, can have this kind of device to have a rough estimate of their serum bilirubins and refer adequately. But the limitation is that it's not able to measure very high values and very low values, and hence leads to the laboratory testing for serum bilirubin being the gold standard. Now, when it comes to the laboratory testing, I'd like to emphasize on 2 key areas, which is the quality and the quantity. So with the quality, it's very important for us to be able to take blood samples through venipuncture and put it in the right tube. So for serum bilirubin, we usually put it in the yellow top tubes as against the common EDTA ones that we use for other hematological analysis. So in events that there's situations that you have someone taking a blood sample and put it in an EDTA tube, realizes that a mistake has been done, then convert it back into a yellow top tube. These things will affect the quality of the sample that is being brought to the lab. And this might eventually lead to possible rejection or erroneous results that we generate at the laboratory. Now, for the quantity, at UGMC and some other facilities, neonatal venipuncture or sampling is very difficult and will require experienced personnel to be able to attain that. So you realize that some of these samples through difficult sampling have very low volume. But the machines that we use at the various laboratories require certain specific amount of serum. And if they are not of the required volume, this will result in insufficiency and incomplete analysis of the serum bilirubin levels that we seem to achieve. So serum or plasma forms about 55% of whole blood. So let's say you take about 1 ml of blood, because sampling is very difficult and you end up taking about 1 ml of blood to test for serum bilirubin. When you bring it to the lab and we treat it, extracting the serum, we are getting around 500 microliters. And this is significantly inadequate. So we usually recommend that we take around 3 to 5 ml of blood for serum bilirubin analysis. And also, if there are other investigations that we need to do, such as the GC speed, blood grouping, and the others, let's kindly take multiple samples and put them in other tubes, such as the EDT as well, so that we can have enough blood to extract the serum and assess the serum bilirubin levels. Now, for interpretation of the results, One for UGMC, this is our local established reference ranges. And usually reference ranges may vary from laboratory to laboratories due to testing techniques and principles, and also the differences in the machines that we use. Some reference ranges are also being established following population studies or research. So it's quite important that when we obtain results from the lab, it is very important for us to take key notice of the reference ranges that is associated with the laboratory, because it's based on the machine that they are using that they generate the results for you. And based on the reference ranges that are associated with that particular laboratory or the vicinity, will help you be able to interpret these results better. And it's also important for us to know that some of the bilirubin levels vary with age, and it's important to consider these when we are doing our interpretations from the results that we obtain from the laboratory. Now, at the laboratory level, we're able to assess total bilirubin and also measure direct bilirubin as well. But for the indirect, we are able to measure it at the laboratory level, and it's being calculated by subtracting it from the total, as both sum up to form the total bilirubin. Now we're going to look at some of the common sources of errors that we experience at the laboratory. And these errors can be grouped into three categories, which is the pre-analytical, the analytical, and the post-analytical. So the pre-analytical usually involves the processes that the sample go through before we actually run the test on it. And this will include preparing patients, taking samples, transporting it to the lab, and also some pre-treatment procedures to be able to obtain the serum that we need to assess the levels of. So in all this process, there's possible ways that errors can occur, and if they are not, attention is not being paid to, will result in erroneous results generation, and this might affect diagnosis and management as well. Then for the analytical, where we look at equipment calibration and quality controls, if there are any issues surrounding these areas, can also result in erroneous results. Then we have the post-analytical, which involves adding interpretations and delivering the results to the appropriate request medium and asking them to take actions over that. Now, so for the pre-analytical stage, one of the most common causes of errors is through the sample collection. So when, like I initially mentioned, it takes a bit of experience to be able to take samples from units. And a lot of phlebotomists or clinicians taking samples find it a bit difficult to do so. So if the difficulty results in traumatic tapping, this process will introduce some form of hemolysis into the sample that we've analyzed. Then also, like I initially mentioned, for serum bilirubin levels, we need to put it into the yellow top tubes. And for the yellow top tubes, they do not contain any anticoagulant. Some contains clotting activators. So there's no need to actually mix those samples. So if you put it in the serum separator tube, that's the yellow top ones, and you vigorously shake it, you can mechanically introduce hemolysis into the sample. I will later talk about how this affects the results that we generate. Then this is in contrast to the EDTA ones, which contains anticoagulants that anytime you take samples into it, you need to be able to invert it adequately to ensure that the anticoagulant has mixed with the blood to prevent clotting. But for serum bilirubin levels where we put into the yellow top tubes, there's no need to actually mix them. And you can see some people shaking it with all their might, and this can introduce mechanical hemolysis into the sample. Now, one other key source of errors is also sample storage and transportation. Now, we all know and understand the principles underlying phototherapy, where the light shed on the skin of the patient converts the bilirubins into soluble isomers that are excreted into the urine. When we expose samples, that is to assess serum bilirubin to light, some of these processes equally occurs because sunlight contains these blue wavelengths and other light wavelengths that can also cause photooxidations and formation of bilirubin isomers, which will in the end reduce the total serum bilirubin in the blood. So if you take a blood sample, you notice that some will take blood samples and put it on the bench, put it by the window, by the patient's side. Even this light that you are talking about, not only sunlight, but artificial lights like from the bulbs in the rooms that we take these samples, cannot introduce photooxidations into the sample and reduce these serum levels. Also, heat also offers a similar mechanism by forming photooxidation and reducing these serum levels. So it's very important that if a test for serum bilirubin level is requested and the sample is being taken, we try as much as possible to not expose it to light and shield it from heat or high temperatures as well. Now, for the hemolysis, as I've already mentioned about, that is through the traumatic venipuncture or vigorous shaking. What happens is that there's also a possible conversion of released hemoglobin from the hemolyzed RBCs in vitro. So when you put the hemolyzed samples into the tube, whilst it's sitting on the bench or is being awaiting for analysis, there can be possible conversion of the hemoglobin into the bilirubin, which will at the end increase the amount of serum bilirubin levels that we also measure. And this is through non-enzymatic oxidation processes as well. So, and at the lab too as well, we usually generate colors where we know hemoglobin is also a color. So if the sample is hemolyzed, this will add up to the colors that we generate and will increase the amount of serum that we also measure. So if samples are procedures leads to hemolysis and also exposure to light, this will amount to some of the errors that we can get. Now, for the hemolysis, I really want to center on the hemolysis as well again. Some of the hemolysis are visible that we can see, but some of them requires possible serum hemoglobin assessment to check the possible occurrence of hemolysis. So if some of these hemolysis are not being picked up and at the laboratory level, at the analytical stage, these things are skipped and you assess them, you'll be getting some of these erroneous results from the assessment. So it's very important for us to be able to ensure that we don't introduce hemolysis, we put them in the right tube, take the adequate volumes, and also prevent it and shield it from light. Now for the analytical, you can have some equipment calibration and maintenance issues that might result in generating of erroneous results, and also quality control assessments, which might fail. And if key notice is not attended to, then this will also result in erroneous results. So usually for our routine procedure, we usually perform quality control assessments on daily and shift basis at points where results are a bit conflicting, looking at the patient's clinical presentations and others. We also do recalibration and rerun our controls to ensure that they pass. So in laboratory settings where some of these things are failing or are not properly adhered to, then these will result to erroneous results that are being generated. So the key point here is that it's very important for all laboratories to be able to ensure that these things are attended to in the process of the analysis. Now, incomplete interpretation as associated with the post-analytical errors. So, like I initially said, if you analyze the sample that has some form of hemolysis, it's very important for us to attach an interpretation comment to the results that we generate, so that whoever is having access to the results, the clinicians we'll be able to take into consideration the state of the sample and the results that have been generated. So when we usually get serum bilirubin levels, let's kindly take a look at these interpretation comments that are being attached to the results, and not just look at the results that have been generated for the serum bilirubin levels. Then we can be able to consider the hemolysis that is contributing to the increase in the levels, or the light that is possibly contributing to the reduction in the levels. Now, there's also a need for effective communication of panic results, which at a certain point in time when there are communication gaps or issues with communications, this might not be possible. But as we all know, the effects of the communications that are associated with type, it's very important that all stakeholders be able to take into consideration effective communication of panic results, so that timely interventions can be implemented to avoid these complications. Now, for our recommendations, like I initially said, there's a need for proper sampling techniques. So in the event where there's difficulty in assessing the vein, let's just kindly call another colleague to also try, or the colleague which we believe is more experienced in this process, because unit sampling is somewhat a bit difficult. So if at any point in time you are finding it difficult, don't try and force yourself to take it, because at the end of the day, you are ending up introducing these hemolysis into the samples, and the results that will be generated will be somewhat erroneous. Then the proper sampling, storage, and transport should also be taken, so that we shouldn't take the samples and put it on the bench, then waiting for transport. Some like there's no one to transfer the sample, then you are busy doing something, then at the end of the day, you bring a sample later to the lab, then these results might be possibly erroneous. There's also situations where samples are being taken and being given to relatives to send into the lab. Now, owing to the need to be able to protect samples from sunlight and also appropriately transport them, if these relatives are not well educated in these conditions, some of them can bring the samples to us. They might be hemolyzed or might have also had a previous exposure to sunlight, which we might not be able to ascertain the effect. So if certain laboratories might be able to check and be able to determine the level of hemolysis that have been introduced. But it should be very, very important that we advocate that it's not worthy to give samples to relatives to send you to the lab themselves, because it won't be practical to be able to educate everyone or these relatives who are laymen how to effectively protect these samples from sunlight. More also, there's this particular type of sample tube, which is the amber tube, and mostly it's not common in the system, but it's one of the tubes that we can also consider, because it's brown in color and it's able to shield the sample that we put into the tube from sunlight. So in facilities that have these amber tubes, you can equally use those amber tubes just when they are only assessing for serum or light sensitive analytes as well. Then let's kindly take notice of the interpretations and comments that are associated with the results that we generate, so that we'll be able to have proper interpretation and making clinical decisions. Now, there is a need for regular calibration and quality control protocols in our various laboratories to ensure the accuracy and reliability of the results that we obtain. Because if this is a very key important at the analytical stage, and if these things are not paid attention to, can result in the erroneous results that we generate. Now, there's a need for high precision for identify the interference, which is some of the hemolysis, other analytes, like example, like a lipemic sample can equally introduce an interference in the measurement of serum bilirubin levels. So there's a need to be able to address them at the laboratory level and appropriately use underlying protocols to reduce this interference and to be able to have a true picture of how much serum bilirubin levels that we do have. Then there's also a need to treat laboratory testing for serum bilirubin as an agency. So in events, there's a need to not let the sample sit on the bench for a very long time. Let's take the sample, transport it quickly to the lab. Then for the laboratory aspect, we need to be able to communicate the results effectively to the other stakeholders as early as possible in events of panic results so that there can be timely interventions. But in conclusion, the lab in its jurisdiction understands that we provide aid in diagnosis and management of neonatal bleed. And due to that, there's a need for us to ensure that there's accurate measurement and interpretation of the results that we provide. Then some of these errors that spans across the pre-analytical stage to the post-analytical stage. And this has been explained as multidisciplinary involved. So it's not necessarily only associated with the laboratory, but it's possible that some of these errors that have been introduced were introduced at the pre-analytical stage all the way through to post the analytical stage as well. So there's a need for effective quality control measures at our various laboratories so that the results that we generate are very accurate and reliable to support decision making. So these are my references, and we can take a look at them, then look at some of the effects that light and temperature have on serum bilirubin, effects of hemolysis interference on routine biochemistry parameters, and be able to understand the effects that we introduce when we do not actually take appropriate samples and all of it. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Otu. That was, in fact, very, very, it was so informative. And I'm even looking back at some errors that personally I may have caused. Thank you so much. We already have some questions in the chat, so we'll start with those ones. If you have a question, please, you can raise your hand so that we give you the opportunity. So I'll first of all start with, I think this is a comment from the Chief Biomedical, just a moment, quite a lot to scroll through. Yes, so he's the Chief Biomedical Scientist from 37 Military Hospital, and he's given us some comments, Mr. John Ani Amponsa. So first of all, to obtain prompt results and critical values for management and treatment, a team should be built. An electronic platform can be created, bringing all stakeholders together, starting from the phlebotomist to the physician. 2. Setting satellite laboratory closer to the NICU will save time and avoid unnecessary delays. 3. Avoidance of hemolyzed samples to the lab prevents delays and unnecessary discrepancies in patient results. Thank you so much for these very valuable comments. We have a question from Prof. Onike Rodriguez. 5 mils of blood is a huge volume for a tiny neonate. Can the labs not get any machines that use much smaller volumes of blood? So I think that's for you, Mr. Otu.
Yes, please. Okay, so the range of volume that I gave, which is between the 3 to 5, usually a range, and it's due to the variety in machines that we use to assess. So if, let's say, you take about 2 mils of blood to a particular laboratory to assess serum bilirubin, you can get results. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you are taking the same, can take the same volume to a different laboratory, and that volume will be sufficient because they might be using different machines that requires different volumes. Now, some of these machines, we have newer machines that are being produced to be able to reduce the amount of volume that it requires. If we use UGMC, for instance, we've recently acquired a new machine which we inaugurated not too long ago this year. And from our analysis, we realized that we usually take a smaller amount of serum as compared to the previous machine that we were using. So there are machines that usually requires that can require lower volumes of serum for its analysis. However, it's not all the machines. So depending on the laboratory that you are sending. So sometimes when it comes to UGMC for instance, sometimes we accept the sample based on the volume that has been submitted. But in events, during our analysis, there's a possibility that there will be a need to rerun some of these samples and to ensure that the results that we've generated is accurate. If we ensure that there's control issues, there's calibration issues, we have to recalibrate and rerun these samples. So if the sample is not enough, which means in the course of the analysis, it will be insufficient and we'll have to call back to the ward to retake the sample and bring us more. And these things will reduce and will increase the turnaround time for the results that we generate. So that's why it's important. If you can get this volume, then that is very, very adequate for most of the machines that we use in our various laboratories nationwide. However, if we have intangent communication with the particular laboratory that we are sending these samples to, they can be able to tell you how much the minimum amount of volume that they require. Also, I also indicated that the sample volume that you are taking, half of it is what constitutes the serum. So if you're able to take about a ml or two mils, or let's say with the 3 mils that I'm talking about, only 1.5 ml of it is serum. And some of these machines might be taking around 500 microliters to about 700. So about 2 rounds, we literally consume some of all these serum that we've acquired. It's not that of huge, but it's about the particular type of machine that is being used and to prevent resampling of samples, insufficiency, delaying and increasing the turnaround time for the results that we adequately generate as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question for you again. How long should the sample take to be transported to the lab? Mr. Otu, are
Okay,
you with
so yes, please, I'm here. Okay, so usually studies have shown that minimum the sample shouldn't stay on the bench for long. And we've actually had studies that have analyzed the effects of long standing of the samples with time. So practically, if it's ideal, after sample taking, if transportation is available, then I think we should be able to send it to the lab. And we shouldn't cultivate the habit of putting the sample on the bench, because how long taking a sample to the lab is literally not on the basis of how fast we need to run the results, but it's on the basis on the exposure or the factors that will contribute to the errors that we obtain. So if you take a sample and you're keeping it at the ward, most likely if there is no proper protection from sunlight, then we are introducing all these errors into the sample before we send it to the lab. So if you take the sample and you can quickly send it to the lab, that is very, very effective. We also know that neonatal hyperbilirubinemia is a very, very serious condition where its complications are um, lifelong ones. So at the end of the day, bringing the sample to the lab early also results in getting the results early, because it takes a bit of some processes to treat the samples and also analyze them. So how long it takes to send to the lab usually comes is multifactorial, where we are preventing the introduction of errors such as heat, because if the temperature at the various wards might not be convenient, it's very important that if you need to store serum, you need to store it at lower temperatures. And if you are not able to provide these temperatures at the wall, keeping them there will not be effective. So
Thank you very
that's
much. Oh, sorry.
so with that effect, it's very important that when we take the sample, let's just kindly bring it to the laboratory as early as possible so that we can prevent introduction of these errors.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Otu. We have another question in the chat. Dr. Isel, I think you can help us with this one. Is it advisable to educate mothers to practice the early morning sit in sun with the baby in a way to prevent jaundice?
Okay, so thank you for the question. So it's a no answer we are giving to all the mothers. Why do we say that sun bath is not the best to do? One is, as we said, the sun, apart from UV light, normally that's what I tell parents. One, that they tell you that they will ask you the question that, oh, doctor, but it's been proven that the sunlight is very good for the baby. And I go by saying that, okay, so you're not totally wrong that the sunlight has some good blue light or UV light in it. In fact, it is through the sunlight that was discovered that you could use that to treat baby jaundice. What came out? The problem was that there were babies that were nursed in baby in a nursery, and you would notice that those who were closer to the windows were not getting jaundice as those who were far away from the windows, and that's where everything started from. So yes, there is some evidence. However, this is the reason why, or these are the reason why it is not good for you to expose your baby to this. Now that there are good machines for you to be used. One is apart from the UV light, there are other radiations that are not good for the baby that can cause problems for your baby. In fact, some people have even talked about causing cancer. That is one. Two, you need to know the level of the serum bilirubin. Mostly people will assess jaundice with their visual eyes, and that is not a good thing to do. As we discussed today, the gold standard is taking the laboratory serum bilirubin to be able to detect that. So that is what. So if you are exposing your baby to a sign that you don't know the level, and the scientist is not going to clear your baby's jaundice as effective as the machines, the phototherapy will do, then it is not good. And most people, at the end of the day, they even bring their baby back to the hospital, and most of the time when they come, it might be too late. So it is not good to expose baby to light. So I noticed that we have quite a number of other health personnel on the board, and we need to make sure that we educate our mothers that if you see your baby's skin to be yellow, if you see your baby's eyes to be yellow, take the baby's also, because there could be even a lot of reasons. The other point is the cause of the jaundice. You need to underline, find the cause of the jaundice, as we discussed today. The cause will be multifactorial. So you need to find the cause, and all these things can be done by a health professional. So there is no you don't have to tell anybody to be exposing the child, the sun to light. It is not a good advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aho Isel. So there's a comment in the chat box that it is high time we start thinking about our neonates when importing equipment. That's from Sister Joyce Mawena. I agree. So we have another question here. What is the actual levels of SBR that warrants phototherapy initiation?
Okay, so I think I'll take that question, right? So
Yes.
the serum bilirubin level requiring phototherapy depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the risk factor of the baby. It depends on how old the baby is, and of course the levels. So you might have a baby who is born today and comes up with a serum bilirubin level. I'm not going to give values so that people don't go and interpret and use it wrongly. You get a value which, if you compare to the nomogram, to the baby's age and all that, it will tell you that you should start photo, and that is it. So we don't only just use the laboratory what do you call it ranges that Mr. Otu gave us, for example. You will need to use the patient risk factors, the age of the baby, and compare to the nomograms. There are quite a number of nomograms, but the two most popular ones are the our hourly Botany nomogram, for example, the US one, and also there's the NINE's guidelines nomograms, whichever. That one even start from prematurity up to 10 babies, and that is quite okay. But what we should also know is that the nomograms were not done for our population. They were done for other population, mostly Caucasians. And so if you see a baby who is looking jaundiced, and especially if you don't have any means to check the serum bilirubin, your best bet is to start phototherapy. If you see a baby who is jaundiced and you cannot check, your best bet is to start, even though the test will tell you that if you see a baby whose jaundice is up to the trunk, is quite high, is needing phototherapy. If it's the extremities, that means it's severely jaundice. It's fine. But if you are not very sure of the values and you see baby jaundice, your best bet is to start phototherapy, especially if the baby is within the first 1 week.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Isabel. We have another question here from Mr. Anthony Safo, and I think this will go to Engineer Yeboah. Is it advisable to have an air condition in a room where the phototherapy machine is?
Yeah, if you're having the fluorescent or the CFLs, the fluorescent, conventional fluorescent lamps, they tend to give the kids hyperthermia because it generates too much heat. And so if you have that type, then you should definitely have it in an air-conditioned room. But if you are using the LED types, they usually don't emit too much heat, and so you can put it in a normal room temperature.
Okay. Thank you very much, Engineer Yeboah. We'll take our last question in the chat. Dr. Isel, please, can you throw more light on breast milk jaundice as a cause of neonatal jaundice?
Okay, all right. So, I mean, breast milk jaundice is, as we know, you have a breastfeeding jaundice, you have a breast milk jaundice. These are the two when it comes to jaundice related to breastfeeding. Breast feeding jaundice is mostly when the babies are not feeding and not getting enough milk. They come in dehydrated, mostly lost quite a number of of their body weight, and then so they become this. Mostly it is in the early days of the baby's life, within the first 2-3 days. That's where it will start from. Breastfeeding jaundice is thought to be due to particular substances in the breast milk that prolong the jaundice. So first of all, you need to make sure that you rule out other causes of jaundice. Even for the breastfeeding jaundice, you have to rule out other causes of jaundice. And as I pointed out, and for me, this is what I want us to start thinking about, that the jaundice that you see in a baby, there is no one particular pathophysiology that is mostly there are quite a number of things contributing to that. So that baby with breast milk jaundice might become dehydrated, might not have passed even meconium, that might have some ABO incompatibility in a way. So there are lots of things that might come in. You need to rule out other things. It could be that there's a sepsis and all that. It could be that if it's a jaundice that is a pathological jaundice that is starting, maybe a prolonged one is starting. So you need to look out for what might be the cause of the jaundice before you go and say that a baby have breast milk. Mostly, it's said that the breastfeeding jaundice, the levels don't go very, very high. But if you see a baby who has a very high serum bilirubin above the photo level, don't be considering those ones as breast feeding jaundice and breast milk jaundice. In terms of breast milk jaundice, it's actually a bit prolonged. Like you see it later date after a week and all that. And as I said, it's due to some chemicals in the breast milk that might be causing that. And yes, some people say that if you stop breastfeeding, the milk will go back. People continue breastfeeding, and so the jaundice also improve. But as I said, look out for the possible causes, because there are a lot of causes that you might have to treat. So please look out for causes before you go and say you have a breast milk jaundice. The other thing I want to say is that for the early days, it is well known that babies who breastfeed are at more risk of developing jaundice compared to babies who are formula fed. So in all, babies who breastfeed might become jaundice. So that does not actually even mean that it's a breast milk jaundice. It's something that is there just due to because they don't get enough breast milk, they become dehydrated, and all those things might come in. So yes, babies who breastfeed themselves are at risk of hyperbilirubinemia, but that does not mean that you go and tell parents to be babies formula feed. However, in my opinion, if the mother is not breastfeeding, some not lactating, sometimes mother would have gone 3 days, 72 hours, not lactating, nothing is coming. The breasts are not engorged and all that. Baby is crying. Notice that he's lost significant weight. That baby, you cannot continue telling the mother that he should breastfeed. You need to find a way of feeding that baby so that it's actually allay the anxiety of the family, because sometimes the parents become very, very anxious when the mother is not lactating, the breast is not coming, baby is crying all the time. So find a way and then tell them that immediately baby is breastfeeding, they can now go back to practice exclusive breastfeeding from that point. And I think for me, it works that way. When I have mothers who are not lactating, and sometimes due to a lot of things, they've gone through cesarean section, they are in a lot of pain. There's nobody supporting them. There's a lot of stress on them. So genuinely, they might not lactate. Some of them are they are in that they are blues or they are depressed and all that, and so they don't breastfeed early. And so you have to find a way of feeding that baby so that you prevent all these problems from happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esau. Actually, our Q&A was supposed to be over, but there are two last questions that I think we need to cover. So this one goes to Engineer Abna Yeboah. So how can we help babies who have jaundice, but there's no electricity in their community to power the phototherapy machine? Do we have battery-operated ones or solar ones available to be bought?
Yeah, there are actually some that they've generated using solar panels. And so yes, there are some brands that offer the solar powered ones.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but what I also add, Ruth, what I also add to what Abner has said is that it's not everywhere that you will find such phototherapy units. So if you see a baby in a community with jaundice and you don't have the means, please let the baby go. Go to the next facility where they can get phototherapy, because as I say, for example, I'm afraid of jaundice. If you waste time, if you delay, that baby might have a serious issue, bilirubin encephalopathy, and you won't be happy. You won't be happy. So please, if you don't have the means, let the baby go.
Okay. And the last question goes to you, Dr. Esau. Please, at what age can bilirubin not cross the blood-brain barrier?
Okay, so that's another very important question that sometimes even clinicians sort of, people will say that, okay, after the first week, 10 days, the bilirubin does not cross the blood-brain barrier. But the point that I want us to understand, I want to make is that nobody know at what age and at what level of serum bilirubin babies develop encephalopathy, depending on a lot of reasons, a lot of factors. A baby might develop a bilirubin encephalopathy. So don't use that. What you should know is that the baby is at the serum bilirubin, or the baby is clinically at a level that you need to start phototherapy. Please start for that. Don't waste time. If you need to start. If you think that the baby is at risk, please start. Don't be using those time. Sometimes you have a baby who is 10 days and then his total serum bilirubin is 500 and something. 400 and something, and maybe people will say that no, don't have to start phototherapy because that brain barrier is matured. No, please. Nobody knows at what level the serum bilirubin will cause encephalopathy. So please, if you have the means, you want to start phototherapy, please start phototherapy for such babies, especially if the total sorry, the direct bilirubin is less than 10%, or sorry, more less than 20% of the total bilirubin. Please find a way of starting phototherapy if you need to start in the very, very high cases of serum, in those people with a very high serum bilirubin. Even at 10 days, you might need to start.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Isel. So don't delay, start immediately. I think we've had a very, very fruitful discussion. We will now call upon our Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Mary Ania Ponsa, to give us her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam and Dr. Shandoff. I will be very brief in this summary. I'd like to thank our presenters. They've done an amazing job. All the sessions have been very informative, and we have learned a lot. The kind of questions that our audience have asked are very great, setting us thinking in the direction that we need to go as a country to help resolve newborn jaundice issues. So we've had great presentations today. We began our session with Dr. Isel from the Bank Hospital, who walked us through care for children, care for newborns, and he focused primarily on the guidelines and gave us very good emphasis on the points at which these newborns need to be examined. For the most part, he made us have a good understanding around the fact that even if we have to adapt guidelines, we need to be sure that these guidelines are adapted with the focus on the contextual differences that we have within our context. This was followed by Madam Rita Tete, who also gave us very good insights into the need for collaborative care for newborns with jaundice. That was very informative when she emphasized on the need for close monitoring as well. This was followed by Madam Shanice, a parent. Her experience as a parent was very great for us as clinicians. Why? Because for the most part, the things that we take for granted, she gave us a very good emphasis on the fact that when we give them good information, when we're able to allay their anxieties, sometimes, for the most part, even though these anxieties may be present, it's able to support them through the admission process. And for me, what struck me about her experience was the fact that she didn't know about rebound jaundice. That sets us thinking as clinicians on the need for us to do more in-depth education when we're enlightening families on newborn jaundice. She had a question on sunbath, which Dr. Isel has really good given us good responses about. And then we followed up with a biomedical engineer who gave us very good insights into equipment and the need for us to take very good care of these equipments. And the kind of exposure she also gave us on the Billy mat was quite good. One thing about the Billy mat that I found quite great was that it will allow us to also facilitate breastfeeding for these infants for the most part. In settings where these Billy mats are used, breastfeeding can be done as well. We ended our presentations with our biomedical engineer, who also gave us very great information around sample taking, transportation of these samples, the quantity of blood we need, and how to keep these samples very much good for effective processing. So for me, the kind of question we have moving forward is, what do all these lessons tell us? Or what do all these information tell us? Perhaps moving forward, we need to begin to look at the use of not just a Billy pad, but also a Billy cocoon. These devices support not just the 360 radius but also they give the parents the opportunity to feel part of the care experience. Again, when we look at the data we have as a country on health literacy and the kind of gaps that we have on what parents know and what we as clinicians know and the kind of information we're giving to families, we all do appreciate that there are gaps in health literacy related to newborn jaundice. So when we're looking at global health media videos, for instance, for the most part, these global health media videos have local language opportunities. But then if I were to ask us here what jaundice is in our local language, I don't know how many of us know what jaundice is in our local language. When I set out to find out what jaundice is, I was surprised to know that jaundice is called hurainini, and I never knew this. But I believe that if you're a Ga here or you are whichever local dialect you speak, we need to be able to break down the science that we have to our families, to our communities, to our patients in a language they can appreciate, in a language they can understand. I know that Huraya is fever, but I didn't know that Hurayanini is jaundice in the Akan language. And that's how the community where we collected that data from, that's how they identify, that's how they call jaundice. So in as much as we look at these global health media videos that we send to our students, we send to our residents, we share with our patients, I guess moving forward, we need to begin to look at what works for us in our Ghana communities. How many of our jaundice lessons or our jaundice campaigns are spoken in languages that our communities can best understand? I will end off with two major things. When I scoped the literature on jaundice in Ghana, I was surprised to identify that there weren't enough studies on risk prediction of jaundice as compared to other countries where jaundice levels are so low. So I guess we're doing great jobs in jaundice research, but perhaps we need to begin to expand our borders a bit more and begin to look at risk prediction studies and how this can help us prevent jaundice. So if you're looking at the tools that there are, you can identify that conditions such as GCSPD or in situations where there's maternal sepsis or in conditions where there's a previous history of a sibling that had jaundice. For the most part, all these are present on the risk prediction tools. And so at the antenatal stage, the midwife or whoever is attending clinician can use this risk prediction tool to begin to assess a pregnant woman in such a way that if they fall into one or two or any of the categories, they are closely monitored. Jaundice is preventable, and we can strengthen our risk prediction practices. We can largely address the jaundice problems that we are having within our country. Yes, we are doing great with our curative care, but we need to begin to look at our primary healthcare approach also to newborn jaundice. Because like Dr. Essel did say from the beginning, and I totally agree with him, I am so much afraid of jaundice. It's scary. It takes the life of not just a baby, but of the entire family. I'm going to end with the need for us to begin to look at gathering empirical data at facility levels and making this data relevant to us as a country. I believe that when we're meeting here next year, we'll have a good story around how this empirical data has transformed or is beginning to transform the kind of care that we have. Yes, the experiences are great. Yes, the practice exposure is great, but I guess we need to begin to strengthen our empirical data in such a way that this data can drive the care that we're going to give to our our pregnant women, to our babies that are struggling with jaundice, and to the families who do not have a clue around what jaundice is. On this note, I want to say thank you very much for having me for this session, and I look forward to further collaboration to resolve the jaundice issues that we are having as a country. I wish you the best. Dr. Sam and Dr. Shandov, I'm very grateful for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary Annie Amponsa. It was a very refreshing closing remarks you've given us, reinforcing the fact that we need to translate all the awareness into action as well as data. I'll hand over now to our chairperson for PSG Greater Accra, Dr. Tina Shandov, to continue with the rest of the program. We're about closing. Please don't leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for making this meeting a success. Thank you everyone who joined, our senior members, Prof. Rod, to everyone who all the way from the US, and Dr. Alassane Mumin, Prof. Alassane Mumin, who also joined all the way from US. Dr. Lomote, Dr. Zoya, thank you so much. And each and every one of you. I can see a number of nurses. Thank you so much. And I pray that we all become part of the change for these children. So as part of our announcement page, take time and be part of PSG. If you see progress here in Ghana, and join. I've shared the link on them so we can join through there. May is ending. May is not over yet, so please, all those who have been the advocacy, one more day left. When we go through all the awareness, educational videos and Greater Accra region, when we select the winner, but we are all winners in that regard, but the winner for ceremonial purposes of exciting. We are going to have 3FM we do every June, and it's a one-stop shop for child care products, opportunity to interact with parents, public on important on child health promotion. And for our project for June, for of Ghana, and this will teach as well. Street children have been marginalized for long, and we want to focus on the issue. We want to discuss solutions in which we can all contribute, make this situation. And said, please become a member so that you can get the opportunity for more advocacy. You can get to participate in programs. You can get to interact with healthcare professionals from for there's going to be whooping 20%. So doctors.
Dr. Shandov, you're breaking a bit.
I put my video up. Okay.
Yes, it's a tad better. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So yes, it's all become members of Pediatric Society of Ghana of the improved health care. And I said I mentioned the fund of June, a special 20% discount and pay the cedis and 240 Ghana cedis, and for doctors 20 Ghana cedis. So please do take notes and then take opportunity of this discount. So thank you all so much for joining today. Thank you for staying on, even though we ran a bit over time. We hope that this advocacy will not just be a discussion, but it's a call for action. It's a call for us to change our modes of thinking whenever we are treating children with neonatal jaundice. And I love what our dear nurse from Odumasi said, that and I encourage us facilities. So to pair up certain Big Brother jaundice facility and increase and for those hospitals. So that is to come. So to end the meeting, I would love to call on Dr. to give us the closing prayer before we all this. And unmute yourself.
Yes. Dr. Walanyo, you've been given opportunity to unmute, please.
Yeah, hello. Okay, please let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity and this meeting. We thank you for all the insights that have been shared. We pray that you give us understanding so that we'll be able to apply this knowledge and be able to apply this knowledge in taking care of our patients. We pray committing all our leaders or the leaders that led us to the meeting. Pray that you give them more insight, that the next time when we gather, they'll be able to share. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much to everyone who was part of this. I pray you have a lovely weekend and a good rest of your evening. Thank you so much to all our speakers and our dear chairperson and our indefatigable moderator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.